Hi, it's Paula from Paula Quilting. Welcome back to my channel. Some time ago on one of our quilters meeting here in Southampton, I purchased a big bag of scraps, and bag was paper, so I couldn't kind of see inside exactly what it was, but I was told scraps inside, and obviously I'm always interested in the scraps. I gave a few pounds for all of it, took it home, and then I've opened that paper bag, and in that paper bag were millions and trillions of those little tiny scraps. And as you can see, those squares here are anything between and probably 3/4 of an inch, an inch, and some of them are bigger, different shapes. They are not even the same kind of size, they all kind of vary slightly. So as you can see, this is, I think, maybe some sort of swatch of samples here, because I can see it's pinned together, but again, you could use it for something. So like I said, I have not been looking, you know, in the bag before I purchased it. I just took it home. Then I did open it up, and I was like, oh, what can I make out of it? If everything here was exactly the same size, that would be kind of helpful, I would say. Still quite small for my liking, but at least helpful, because you could kind of chain piece something fairly quickly. But actually, you've got some rectangles, you've got some squares, and all of that is kind of a little bit in different sizes from bag to bag. But I've got a lot of nice colorful patches here, and I decided, actually, you know, I should find a project for it. And as usual with any scraps I've got or any fabrics I get, the project comes to me. I don't plan what I do with it. The project comes first, and then it kind of matches together and we go with it. So I have been asked to make a donation box, quite large donation box, which will need to have obviously quite big hole at the top for the donations to be put through. And I thought actually that might be a good idea to use those scraps, because though it's quite big a donation box I need to make, it's not a quilt, because making quilt out of those scraps, that could take quite a lot of time. And as I was thinking about it, yeah, I can use those. I also thought I always buy the same box of tissues, and they are not very fancy. How about I make a cover for those tissues as well, with the hole where I can pull it up, so I can just swap the tissues underneath. So basically what I'm trying to say, how I'm gonna go about this project, either the collection box or the tissue box, you can make a cover for anything. If you need rectangular or square cover for something to go on top of it, we'll kind of go step by step on how to do it, and I will use those scraps actually to make it. Obviously you might have a bigger pieces, you might have some orphan blocks you would like to use it, or just one big piece of fabric, which will make life so much easier. But I will kind of try to use my scraps and make those two covers for two different type of boxes. So among all of those scraps there are also some random piece scraps like you would normally have, and I decided I would just make a crumbs out of it. So for my bigger box, which is a donation box, I've used brown color for it. So I went through all of those bags, and I pull out anything what was brownish, and I just did the crumbs, and I trimmed them to 6.5 inches. It was the size I could deal with, and there is a reason why I'm saying deal with, because I do not actually fancy that much making crumbs, but I still make them, and that's a kind of story for another video tutorial, or perhaps blog post, so watch the space. So that's what I did with the brown colors, and I will show you my blocks in a minute. Now with the tissue box, actually I will show you how I go about it using those more square-ish scraps, but I'm not planning to trim anything to one size. I'm just gonna sew it as they are, trying to pair them up more or less with the same size, and kind of make it quick rather than, you know, time-consuming project. Okay, so first of all, the dimensions, I need to produce my patchwork tool. And again, depending on your scraps, you may do it kind of two ways. You either calculate this big piece here, one big long piece, or you go this way and then you add the sides to it. Whatever scraps you've got, just see what will kind of fit better. Now I will make one big piece here, and then I will add the sides. So let's just measure what I need. My piece here will be 9 inches wide and 12 inches long. I can trim it obviously later exactly, but that's the starting point. So that's all that here but I need to add seam allowances on the sides because I will be adding the sides to it as well. I will sew it with the 1/2 inch. I might trim it inside later, but let's add 1/2 inch. So that was 9 inches, so 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, so that's 1 inch. I'm not adding at the bottom because I will just finish it off either with bias tape or binding, so there's no extra there. Now, as with quilting, things like to shrink, so obviously if I'm quilting a piece, I would like to add at least 1 inch to account for it. So the first initial piece I want to prepare will need to be a size of 11 by 12 inches. Now to the side, so I can make a side kind of in one long piece and then cut it into the half. Or again, depends on your scraps, you may like to do sides individually. So let's just get the sizes. So my initial size of that side will be 4.5 by 3.5. So it's 4.5 by 3.5. However, on the sides here where that 4.5 is, I need my 1/2 inch of allowance, and I need 1/2 inch at the top. So to this dimension I'm adding 1 inch, and to this dimension I'm just adding 1/2 inch. But then obviously I need to add a little bit of extra for my quilting. So if I just add another 1/2 inch here and another 1/2 inch here, I think I should be alright, and that will be ×2. So the whole piece here to make two sides will need to be 4.5 plus 1 plus 1/2, so that's 6 inches ×2 is 12, and then 3.5 plus 1/2 plus 1/2, so that's 4.5 inches. So I need two pieces. One piece will be 11 by 12, which is here, and the second one will be 12 by 4.5, which is gonna cover 2 of my sides. Again, you may do sides individually, just go with whatever you've got in your scrap boxes, and also depending what cover you're making, obviously you might need, you know, bigger sides, so you might do individually as well, just to add a little bit of design there. So that's for the dimensions. Now I've picked from my stack all of those which are solids, and that's how I'm gonna make my cover for my tissues with the solids colors. So if I need to make a piece which is 11 inches wide-ish, you know, it doesn't have to be exact because I kind of added the extra. This piece is 1.5 inch. After sewing it will be 1 inch. If I want to have 11 inches here, so I need to have 11 of those pieces kind of in one string to cover that width of the box. So this is what I can do. I can pick my colors, and I can see this stack, I think they are all 1.5 inch. So every 11 pieces will be one string. So I can make few of those. Then this piece, this stack is a little bit smaller, 1.25. That means I need a little bit of more of those because they will end up at the 3/4 of an inch. And that's how I will calculate it, make my stacks. For how many of those kind of rows I need, I might not even calculate it. I can make few, sew them together, make few, sew them together until I've got my 12 inches in the length, and start from that. So as you can see here, I've started sewing my stacks, and what I did actually is I kind of chain pieced all of it because it's just quicker, and you know, it's easier to work with the chain piece stuff. So I've put aside how many pieces I need of that size to create my size, which for 1.5 inches I've established was 11, and I've started chain piecing, so I've got my stacks marrying up with the pieces here, and it's quite easy and quick if you do it that way rather than kind of work on one row individually. So here it is, those my stacks are getting created here, and I did also kind of, with the scraps I had, kept them in the kind of in the color groups. I didn't totally mix them, but again that will depend what scraps you've got and how you want those colors to flow in your cover. I just wanted to keep it in the same color group and work that way. Now 1.5 inch is not that bad to work with. I think I've got a stack somewhere which are smaller, and I have sewn some of them already. As you can see, those were I think 3/4, so this is a lot of squares to make that one kind of side. But again, because it's a small project, I don't mind. I don't think I would have patience to make a quilt of that size, unless it would have been very long-term project that I can just kind of pull out, do just a little bit and put the bag away. Now I don't mind if they are a little bit wonky or they're sticking out somewhere, because they were not cut exactly to the same size. They are a little bit of wonky. I will just sew it as they are, and I will then iron the whole of the string of them, perhaps even starch it a little bit at that point, and I can trim the sides a little bit to make it a little bit more straight. So it's not like a proper patchwork where the piece is matching exactly on the side. It's more combination with the cramping, just stitching what fits in your eye well, and then kind of sort it out at the end, because you can always square it up. Right, I stitched my pieces. This is what it looks like after I've ironed it. So most of them look fairly straight, but not all of them. As you can see, those edges are a little bit ragged, because obviously the pieces were not even. So if your small pieces are even and your kind of edge here is quite nice and straight, and obviously you don't have to do this step I'll be doing now, but for me, because they were not that even, I will now trim them. So obviously that saves me a lot of time. If I wanted to trim all of those small pieces individually, that would take basically forever. But here I'm just working with the strips, so that's gonna be nice and quick. So I just make sure I've got nice straight edge on one side, and then turn it around, see the maximum strip I can trim it to, just realign my edges to the ruler's line and trim it again. And I will do that with all of my strips. And I'm losing a little bit of here of fabric, but at least I know I've got nice straight edge, and everything will be nice, to sew it later. Now I don't mind that this is not necessarily exactly square here. It will all disappear in the quilting anyway. What I just want to achieve here is nice straight edges, so it's easy to sew together. When I finish all of it with all of my strips, as you can see, I've got different colors here. I was kind of keeping them in color families. So the next step will be to kind of arrange them in the way I feel for me will look nice. So I don't know how it will look yet. So on average, probably after stitching, each of the strip will be about either half an inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch. Some of them maybe will be quarter, I don't know. But if we think it will be 3/4 of an inch, then once I know how long the piece needs to be, obviously I can divide the dimension by whatever strip I can achieve, and then I know how many of those strips I need to stitch together. Or I can just go organically, start stitching them together one after another, measure it every now and then, see if I've achieved that. There's one amendment to the measurement I've done here. So I did say the final square or rectangle I need 9 by 12. I've added here for the side seams, I don't need at the bottom, but actually for the quilting the piece needs to be bigger, at least about half an inch or inch, depends how much quilting you will do as well. So I forgot to add here an inch. So the final rectangle I need is 11 by 13 inches. So let me quickly do that now. So step 1, square up all of those strips. Step 2, arrange them in the way I like. Step 3, sew it all together so I've got that rectangle. Here are my completed pieces. I was also thinking while I was making those pieces that you could also do one long piece to go around and then just insert the top of it like I said, there's always plenty of ways to arrive to the same destination. So now I will just baste it with 3 layers as usual you would do with the quilt it, and then we will cut it to the size, and I will insert the hole so I can pull out my tissues out of that box. So here are my quilted pieces. This one I just went on the seams, and I did that. My favorite now stitching, which is like a wonky straight stitch, is not stitch in the ditch. I'm not doing stitch in the ditch because it's actually a very hard quilting technique where you have to go very slowly with that kind of little bit wonky or something decorative. You can use as well a decorative stitch. You don't have to be that precise, and it will look good as well. So that's my kind of a shell, and that's my piece for the sides. And here is also that piece I was telling you about for the collection box. So again, all of those small squares and rectangles just in brown color. And this one I actually quilted just straight stitching, but just all over zigzaggy kind of pattern. Nothing complicated, just both directions to make it nice and quilted. We are ready to trim it. Now, one thing you need to remember when you kind of measure whatever thing you want to make a cover for, this is quilted fabric. So what happens with the quilted fabric is it likes to kind of shrink a little bit, and though it lies nice and flat here, when you use it on something it kind of goes shrink together a little bit. So you want to either make it a little bit looser, so when you're taking your dimensions add a little bit of extra. For small project like this I would probably add 1/4. If it's bigger project you might like to go a little bit more, maybe 1/2 inch to all the dimensions. Or if you are not that fast that it needs to kind of sit very nice and flat against whatever that is, then obviously make it bigger, then you would not have that problem. So I will quickly trim my pieces. Okay, my pieces are done. So now the hole. For the hole I first need to decide how big that hole I want to have. So I think I want to have it slightly smaller than that opening here, and obviously depends on what the cover you're making. You might like to go bigger than whatever needs to stick out from the hole, so you just need to kind of go according to the purpose. Okay, so I think 5 inches here, and then I would say 1 inch. So the opening I want is 5 by 1 inch. So I'm gonna take a piece of fabric, and on the left side of that fabric I will draw that rectangle. So 5 inches long, 1 inches wide. So that's my opening. I will be sewing on those lines and then cut inside to kind of go through that hole. But then I also need a little bit of outside of it to then kind of finish off that opening. So I will add another inch all around that first dimension. So let's just add 1 inch from that line. So now I'm basically having a rectangle which is 3 inches wide and 7 inches long. Okay, so I can now cut out my shape from this fabric. It doesn't have to be done obviously by the rotary cutter. You can use a scissors for that job as well, just whatever you've got there handy. I don't even know really where my scissors are at this moment, so let's just go with the cutter. I didn't cut it very economically, as you can see, but it was just a piece of scrap I had around here, so I'm just gonna use what I have, and the rest of it I'm sure it's gonna be used and you know, somehow in my other projects, so I'm not that worried. Okay, got that. So the next I want to do is find where is the center of my cover. Now for that I'm not using anyhow pens, I'm just gonna use a pen which is heat removable, because I will be marking on the right side, so I really don't want to make a mark which I don't want to remove. So I'm gonna use black, not red, because it will be better visible. So you can find a kind of middle, you can measure, or you can just fold your fabric into half, or your piece into half, and just mark on those edges here where the center is. And then we're gonna do that in both directions. Again, you could measure it, or you can just fold it, find the middles, and then just make a mark. Then when I open it, I will actually draw lines on those marks, so it's easier to find it. I don't have to go through whole of that piece, I just need a little bit in the kind of on the edges here, because I want to find the middle to put that piece of fabric, basically. Okay, so next bit is I want to find the middle of that, and probably the best way is to use an iron to do that. You will just iron this way, and then you will iron other way around, and you will find your middles. I will do it quickly now. Okay, so this is why on this piece I've used normal pen, because if I have now gone iron it, those markings would have been gone. So on this piece here now, I will just put my opening. So I've got iron line here and iron line here, and I want to match them with my markings I did on the piece of fabric. So here is nicely aligned, and I'm just gonna scoot it out to align with my side markings, and once it's done I can pin it in place. So the first step, very easy. I just want to stitch on my 1x5 rectangle. That's all what we need to do in that first step. I will take it quickly to the machine, do that, and I will show you the next step. So I've stitched all around my initial rectangle, and now that I've stitched it, I can remove my pins and actually take it to the iron to remove those marks I did with the pen. Okay, magically all the markings disappeared. So now I want to cut that in the middle. So again, I can use something to draw myself a line in the middle. So it was 1 inch, so ½ inch is our middle line. But also I don't want to cut from edge to edge. I want to make like a reverse triangles here, and I will cut up to here, and then I will go to those corners on those triangles. So let me just quickly draw it. It's you know, the distance really not that relevant as far as you've got that angle here to go to the corners. So I'll just take my scissors, I'll just fold it into half for that first small cut, just in the middle. Just make sure it's nicely aligned so it will be in the middle on the both sides. Cut a little bit here, and then I can open it up and go with the scissors inside, just nicely on that line up to the top of the triangle here, and then I'm going to the corners, as close to the corner as I can, but obviously not to go to through the threads. And on the other side, same thing, in the middle and to the corners of my rectangles. Here you go. Now I can move that to the inside, that fabric, and as you can see the shape is coming out of my 1 inch by 5. I will take it to the iron and I will pull it on this side and just iron nicely here to make sure it's nice and flat against the backing of it. Now you can, if you like, trim a little bit that bulk here. We're still gonna have to kind of fold it and stitch it, and normally I would have leave it because it gives me kind of the edge to put that fabric against, but you might feel like this is too much. So if you want to trim it slightly here to make a smaller bulk here, that's fine as well. I will leave it as is and we'll see how it goes. So I'll take it to the iron and iron it nice and flat open for that first piece. So normally what you would do is go and top stitch here around the edges to hold it in place, but and you can do that absolutely, but I will just do it in one go. I will fold this fabric here at the back of that lip I've got from opening the that piece, and I will just stitch here. So it's not going to be top stitch by the edge here, but I will stitch here, but it's still going to be held by that stitch, so it's not a problem there. So just to use some pins to hold it in place. Just go through, like you see, it's just going behind that edge I cut from that quilted piece, so it fits nicely there. Just take your time here, because there's quite a few fabrics here you'll be working with, few layers, so just take your time to make it nice and flat and even. But like I said, if you don't like that bulk there, go ahead and trim it, that's fine as well. Here in those corners you like to pull up a little bit, though it's gonna be on the inside, so don't kind of overthink that corner here. It's gonna be in the inside, nobody will be looking at it. So though you want to have it nice and neat and straight, but just, you know, if something stick out slightly, don't worry about that. That's one side. For that fabric which I'm kind of chosen for that binding of that hole, I've chosen something what will go nicely with what I've got at the top, so if it sticks out a little bit on the other side, when you finish, then it kind of it still blends with the rest of the project. So that's another tip here. And last pin. So what I would like to do is, I'm not going to be top stitching here on the edge. I will stitch on the left side at the edge of that folded fabric now to create that binding. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a method to how I place all my pins. So they're all kind of facing round direction, they're facing the same way, so when I'm going to be stitching I can pull them out very easily, so they are not mixed, like which way the head is going, which way the kind of sharp edge is going. So I'm just going to place that, like I said, on the edge of that binding and go stitch around it. If you're worried that your straight stitch is not going to be very straight, use a decorative stitch to finish off that edge. That's the other thing you can do to make it look nice and purposely uneven, let's say it that way. Okay, so I'm done with my hole, looks pretty good. And now it's time to assemble the rest of the cover. Okay, I've got all my 3 pieces and I'm ready to construct my cover. Now, before you stitch it, you may like to go around and secure edges with the zigzag. I will actually do it when I stitch it. That's my preference. So you just go with whatever you like. So what I want to do is find my middles on the sides. So that's my middle here. and find my middle on my small piece. That's my middle here. Right side to each other, I will find my middle, so that's where I need to be with the stitching here. Just put it in, and I will start stitching from one of the edges here. I'm not marking anything else. With the bigger project you may like to go around and put some more pins there, but with the smaller project, as far as you kind of get to the middle, you will be okay. So I'm starting from one side, and seam allowance here I've got 1/2 inch, so there's a little bit of wiggle room there. If you're concerned that it's not gonna match something, you may like to baste it first. Just use very kind of long stitch, maybe like 4 or even 5, just to stitch it lightly and see if it works. If it works, that's fine. You just go back and put correct stitch. If it doesn't work out why doesn't it work, and you can obviously rip it fairly easily and stitch it again. So I'm not gonna be basting it. I'll just go ahead and I'm hoping it's gonna match. So I'm just going to go with that edge here, and I want to stop again a 1/2 inch from the edge of my small piece here. So you can put a pin there, you can measure it. I will more or less eyeball, but I will stop in that point there. Here we go. I went to the 1/2 inch from the edge of my small piece here, and maybe one more stitch here, and I will now pivot. So I'll turn it around. It's going to be a little bit of wiggling here. You just want to keep your middle pin where it was to make sure it's matched. You might like to move a little bit those pieces here. I'll just take it away from the machine for a minute. You may need to wiggle them to kind of fit them in nicely. This is quilted fabric, like I mentioned before, so it should be fairly easy to kind of maneuver there to make sure it's nice. So once you've turned it around, go back and start stitching the other direction. Don't remove your middle pin. That pin you want to keep there until you get to that pin. So this is nice and flat and nothing moved. So again, now I'm going in, and I will now pivot again, and I want to align those edges here at the bottom. If something doesn't match, again you can kind of shuffle that fabric a little bit. It's all nice and soft, so you should be able to do it fairly easily. And stitch again. Okay, let me quickly see on the inside how it looks. It looks good, no problems there. So now we can do the same thing on the other side. Before I show you my finished project, just a quick reminder where you can find me and how you can support my work. You can subscribe to my website to be notified when new tutorials, products or patterns are released. You can find me on my Facebook page, Pola Photo, or you can join my group page, Pola Quilting with Friends, where we all share work made inspired by my tutorials and answer any questions you may have. There is Instagram account called Pola Quilting, and if you like to share something you made based on my tutorials, please tag me using hashtag Pola Quilting with Friends. To support my work, please like, comment and share when you see my posts or tutorials. Let your quilting friends know about this channel and invite them to the group and subscribe to my channel. If you like to contribute extra, you can use super thanks on YouTube or buying me virtual tea, coffee or lunch available on my page. All links are in the description below. I would like to thank you all for all the support so far and letting me grow in what I do. Okay, done. So those seam allowances here are quite big. They were 1/2 inch, so I will try to put it on the box without trimming them, see how it will look. But if it's going to be bulky and kind of stick away from the box, I will trim them before I do the zigzag stitch to secure them. So let's put it on. I like to push those corners from the inside before you put it on your cover or on your box or whatever you're putting the cover on. It doesn't actually look bad even with those seams. I think they're adding a little bit of structure to that cover. That box is quite soft inside, so actually it holds nicely. So I will leave them. I think they are gonna be alright like that. So there are 2 steps remaining now, so I will turn it back to the wrong side and I will secure with the zigzag all of those edges here to make sure they don't fray, but just the ones on the kind of sides here. The one at the bottom I'm not doing anything at this point. That will be step 2 where I will add a binding. So I'll just trim those corners here as well to match what is on the other side. Quickly zigzag and we'll put the binding. Okay, time for binding. I will stitch it on the wrong side first on the machine, and I will then finish off also on the machine on the right side. But obviously you can do it other way around. You can stitch on the right side and finish off on the wrong side by hand. That's all the preference. So whatever binding way you like to go with it, whether it's more decorative or less decorative, you can apply to this project. I've got quite a few tutorials about how to do the binding, so I will link them in the description below. And here we go, my cover will be ready. And if you like to see my second cover I've made and also the donation box, please join me for show and tells. Show and tells are for you to see how I finish all my projects to the end, what maybe quilting method I've used, what binding method I've used, all of those things which I maybe not cover in the initial video, but I will tell you all about it there. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you like this project and you will try to make one for yourself for whatever you want. That's why I've called this tutorial Make a Cover for Anything, because with this method and kind of those steps you can do that. Whether you want to or you need a hole somewhere or you don't, you can kind of adjust that project to whatever the needs are. And as mentioned, I probably wouldn't make a quilt from all of those small rectangles and squares, but for small project like this I don't mind kind of spend a little bit of time to put those together. Thank you for watching. I hope you will share this tutorial, subscribe if you haven't done so. Happy sewing and see you next time.